Violet stood at the kitchen window, her fingers tracing the condensation on her coffee mug as she gazed out at the misty morning. The world outside seemed to mirror her inner turmoil, hazy, uncertain, and shrouded in secrets. At 45, she had thought her life was settled, predictable even. But that was before Logan arrived. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, each one sending a jolt through her body. At 28, Logan was young enough to be her son, a fact that both thrilled and horrified her. He was her husband's protege, a brilliant young architect who had come to stay with them while working on a major project in their small coastal town. What had started as a simple act of hospitality had spiraled into something far more complex and dangerous. "Morning, Violet." Logan's voice was husky with sleep as he entered the kitchen. She turned, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good morning, Logan. Coffee?" He nodded, running a hand through his tousled dark hair. Violet's breath caught as she watched him, memories of the previous night flooding her mind. The stolen kisses in the shadowy hallway, the desperate fumbling of hands, the guilt that followed. It was all too much. As she handed him the steaming mug, their fingers brushed, and Violet felt that familiar spark of electricity. She pulled away quickly, turning back to the window. "James called this morning," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "He'll be home next week." Logan's silence spoke volumes. Violet's husband, James, had been away on business for the past month, leaving her and Logan alone in the sprawling Victorian house by the sea. What had started as innocent conversations over dinner had gradually evolved into something far more intense. "I see," Logan finally replied, his tone unreadable. "I suppose I should start looking for my own place then." Violet's heart clenched at the thought. She knew it was the right thing to do, the only thing to do, really. But the idea of Logan leaving, of ending whatever this was between them, felt like a physical pain. "You don't have to rush," she found herself saying, against her better judgment. "James won't mind if you stay a bit longer." Logan moved closer, close enough that Violet could feel the heat radiating from his body. "But what about you, Violet? Will you mind if I stay?" She turned to face him, her resolve crumbling as she met his intense gaze. "Logan, we can't. This isn't." But her protests died on her lips as he leaned in, capturing her mouth in a searing kiss. Violet knew she should push him away, end this madness before it destroyed everything she had built with James. Instead, she found herself melting into his embrace, her fingers tangling in his hair as she pulled him closer. As they broke apart, both breathless, Violet saw a flicker of something in Logan's eyes. Guilt, perhaps, or uncertainty. It mirrored her own conflicted emotions. "We need to talk about this," she said softly, stepping back to put some distance between them. "Really talk, Logan. We can't keep pretending that this isn't affecting us, that it won't have consequences." Logan nodded, running a hand through his hair, a nervous habit that Violet had come to find endearing. "I know. Believe me, Violet, I've been thinking about nothing else, but every time I try to do the right thing, to walk away, I just can't. There's something about you that I can't resist." His words sent a thrill through her, even as guilt gnawed at her conscience. Violet had always prided herself on her integrity, her loyalty to James. They had been married for 20 years, building a life together that was comfortable, if not always exciting. James was a good man, dedicated to his work and to her. He didn't deserve this betrayal. And yet, the passion she felt with Logan was unlike anything she had experienced before. It wasn't just physical attraction, though that was certainly part of it. There was an intellectual and emotional connection that had taken her by surprise. Logan challenged her, made her see the world in new ways. He listened to her dreams and aspirations with genuine interest, encouraging her to pursue the art career she had abandoned years ago. "We need to figure this out," Violet said, more to herself than to Logan. "Before James comes home, before someone gets hurt." Logan reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The tender gesture nearly undid her. "I don't want to hurt anyone, Violet, especially not you. But I can't deny my feelings for you either." Violet closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite herself. "We should never have let it get this far. I'm married, Logan. I'm old enough to be your mother. It's wrong on so many levels." "Is it?" Logan's voice was soft but intense. "Age is just a number, Violet. And as for being married, I know it's not my place to say this, but are you truly happy with James? When was the last time you felt truly alive in your relationship with him?" His words hit too close to home. Violet stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself as if to ward off the truth of his statement. Her marriage to James had grown stale over the years, settling into a comfortable but passionless routine. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt the kind of excitement and desire that Logan ignited in her. "That doesn't justify what we're doing," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Logan moved closer again, his eyes never leaving hers. "Maybe not, but it doesn't negate what we feel either. Violet, I've never met anyone like you. You're brilliant, passionate, beautiful. Being with you makes me feel more alive than I ever have before." Violet felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "Logan, please, we can't do this. It's not fair to James, and it's not fair to you. You deserve someone your own age, someone who can give you a future." "I don't want anyone else," Logan said fiercely. "I want you, Violet, all of you, and I'm willing to fight for us if you are." The intensity of his words both thrilled and terrified her. Violet knew they were standing on the edge of a precipice. One step forward and there would be no going back. The sensible thing would be to end it now, to ask Logan to leave and try to salvage what was left of her marriage. But the thought of never seeing him again, never feeling his touch or hearing his laugh, was almost unbearable. "I need time," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Time to think, to figure out what I want. Can you give me that?" Logan nodded, though she could see the disappointment in his eyes. "Of course. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready to talk." As he left the kitchen, Violet felt a mixture of relief and longing. She knew she had a difficult decision ahead of her, one that would inevitably hurt someone she cared about. But for now, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, to gather her thoughts before facing the day ahead. The next week passed in a blur of stolen glances and tense silences. Violet threw herself into her work, spending long hours in her makeshift art studio in the attic. Painting had always been her escape, her way of processing complex emotions. Now her canvases were filled with swirling colors and passionate brushstrokes reflecting the turmoil in her heart. Logan, for his part, seemed to be respecting her need for space. He spent most of his time at the architectural firm where he was interning, coming home late and leaving early. But Violet could feel his presence in the house, could sense his longing gazes when he thought she wasn't looking. As the day of James' return drew nearer, Violet felt a growing sense of panic. She still hadn't made a decision, still didn't know how to navigate the complicated web of emotions she found herself tangled in. Part of her hoped that seeing James again would reignite the spark in their marriage, would make her forget about her feelings for Logan. Another part dreaded his return, fearing that it would only highlight how much things had changed. The night before James was due home, Violet found herself unable to sleep. She tossed and turned in the bed that suddenly felt too large, too empty. Finally, giving up on rest, she made her way downstairs to the kitchen, thinking a cup of tea might calm her nerves. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice Logan until she nearly bumped into him. He was standing at the kitchen counter, a glass of water in hand, wearing only a pair of pajama bottoms. Violet's breath caught at the sight of his bare chest, memories of their stolen moments flooding her mind. "Couldn't sleep either?" Logan asked softly, his eyes searching her face. Violet shook her head, not trusting herself to speak. She moved to the kettle, busying herself with making tea to avoid meeting his gaze. "Violet," Logan's voice was low, intense. "We can't keep avoiding this. James comes home tomorrow. We need to talk about what happens next." She turned to face him, her heart pounding. "I know, I don't know what to say, Logan. I don't know what to do." He moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Tell me you don't feel anything for me. Tell me you want me to leave, and I will. I'll walk away and never look back if that's what you truly want." Violet knew this was her chance, her opportunity to end things before they spiraled even further out of control. But as she looked into Logan's eyes, she found herself unable to lie. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't tell you that, because it wouldn't be true. I do feel something for you, Logan. Something I haven't felt in years, maybe ever. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm married, that I made a commitment to James." Logan reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. "I know, and I respect that, Violet. I respect you. But I also believe that life is too short to settle for less than what makes you truly happy. You deserve passion, excitement, love that sets your soul on fire. Can you honestly say that's what you have with James?" Violet felt tears welling up in her eyes. "It's not that simple, Logan. James and I have built a life together. We have history, shared experiences. I can't just throw that away on a whim." "This isn't a whim," Logan said fiercely. "What I feel for you is real, Violet. It's the most real thing I've ever felt. And I think you feel it too." Before she could respond, Logan leaned in and kissed her. It was a kiss filled with desperation, passion, and a hint of sadness. Violet knew she should push him away, but instead, she found herself responding with equal fervor. Her hands tangled in his hair as she pressed herself against him, all thoughts of propriety and guilt momentarily forgotten. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Violet felt as though her world had shifted on its axis. She looked up at Logan, seeing the mixture of hope and fear in his eyes. "I can't lose you," he said softly. "I know it's selfish, I know it's wrong, but I can't imagine my life without you in it." Violet felt her resolve crumbling. "Logan, But before she could finish her thought, they heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Violet's heart stopped as she realized what it meant. "James," she whispered, panic rising in her chest. "He's home early." Logan stepped back, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "What do you want me to do?" Violet's mind raced. She knew this moment would define everything that came after. With a deep breath, she made her decision. "Go upstairs," she said quietly. "I need to talk to James alone." Logan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead before disappearing up the stairs. Violet took a moment to compose herself, smoothing her hair and taking deep breaths. Then, with a heavy heart, she went to greet her husband. James looked tired but happy as he came through the door, his face lighting up at the sight of her. "Surprise," he said, pulling her into a hug. "I managed to wrap things up early and caught the red eye. I couldn't wait to see you." Violet returned his embrace, feeling a confusing mix of comfort and guilt. As she pulled back, she knew that the next few moments would change everything. "James," she said softly, "we need to talk." The hours that followed were some of the most difficult of Violet's life. She sat with James in their living room, the same room where she had shared so many intimate conversations with Logan, and poured out her heart. She told him about her growing dissatisfaction with their marriage, about the spark that had been missing for years. And with trembling hands and a voice that threatened to break, she told him about Logan. James listened in stunned silence, his face a kaleidoscope of emotions: hurt, anger, disbelief, and finally, a deep, resigned sadness. When Violet finished speaking, the silence that fell between them was deafening. "How long?" James finally asked, his voice hoarse. Violet closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her actions. "It started about 2 weeks after you left. Nothing physical happened until recently, but emotionally, I've been falling for him for weeks." James nodded, his jaw clenched. "And now? What do you want, Violet?" It was the question she had been dreading, the one she had been avoiding even in her own mind. But as she sat there, facing the man she had built a life with, Violet realized that she finally knew the answer. "I want a chance at happiness," she said softly. "Real, passionate, all-consuming happiness. I love you, James. A part of me always will. But I'm not in love with you anymore. And I don't think you're in love with me either. Not really." James was quiet for a long moment, and Violet could see the pain in his eyes. But there was also a flicker of something else. Recognition. Perhaps even relief. "You're right," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. We've been going through the motions for years, haven't we? I just didn't want to admit it. Violet reached out, taking his hand in hers. I'm so sorry, James. I never meant to hurt you. I never planned for any of this to happen. He squeezed her hand gently before letting go. I know, and as much as it pains me to say this, I want you to be happy, Violet, even if it's not with me. Tears streamed down Violet's face as the full weight of the moment hit her. 20 years of marriage, ending in the quiet hours of a summer morning. It felt surreal, like a dream she might wake up from at any moment. What happens now? She asked, her voice shaky. James stood up, running a hand through his graying hair. Now, I think I need some time alone to process all of this. I'll go stay with my brother for a few days. When I come back, we can talk about the practical aspects of ending our marriage. Violet nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She watched as James packed a bag, feeling a mixture of grief for what she was losing and a tentative hope for what might come next. As James prepared to leave, he paused at the door, turning back to look at her. Be sure about this, Violet. Be very sure. Because once we set this in motion, there's no going back. I know, she said softly. I'm sure. I'm sorry it had to end this way, but I'm not sorry for choosing to be true to myself. James nodded, a sad smile on his face. Goodbye, Violet. Take care of yourself. And with that, he was gone, leaving Violet alone in the suddenly too quiet house. She sat there for a long time, letting the tears flow freely as she mourned the end of her marriage and contemplated the uncertain future ahead. It was only when she heard soft footsteps on the stairs that she looked up, seeing Logan standing hesitantly in the doorway. Is it over? He asked quietly. Violet nodded, wiping her eyes. Yes, James is gone. Hez giving me what I asked for. Logan moved to sit beside her on the couch, close but not touching. And what about us? What happens now? Violet turned to look at him, really look at him. She saw the hope in his eyes, the love, but also the fear and uncertainty. She realized that he was just as scared as she was, just as unsure of what the future held. Now, she said, reaching out to take his hand. Now we take it one day at a time. We see where this leads us, without the guilt and secrecy hanging over our heads. It won't be easy, Violet continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. We'll face judgment from others, doubts from ourselves. But I want to give us a real chance, Logan. I want to see if what we have can grow into something lasting and beautiful. Logan's face lit up with a mixture of relief and joy. He pulled Violet into his arms, holding her tightly as if afraid she might disappear. I promise you, Violet, I'll do everything in my power to make you happy, to make this work. As they sat there, wrapped in each other's embrace, Violet felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, she felt truly alive. The next few months were a whirlwind of change and adjustment. Violet and James worked through the painful process of divorce, dividing their shared life with as much grace and dignity as they could muster. There were moments of anger and resentment, days when Violet questioned her decision. But through it all, Logan remained a steady presence at her side, offering support and understanding. As news of their relationship spread through their small coastal town, Violet and Logan faced their fair share of gossip and disapproval. Some of Violet's friends couldn't understand how she could leave her stable marriage for a man nearly 2 decades her junior. Logan's colleagues at the architectural firm raised eyebrows at his involvement with an older, recently divorced woman. But for every person who judged them, there were others who offered support and encouragement. Violet's sister, after initial shock, became their staunchest ally, reminding Violet that life was too short to deny oneself happiness. Logan's parents, though initially wary, came to appreciate the positive change they saw in their son. As the dust began to settle, Violet and Logan focused on building their life together. They moved into a small apartment near the beach, a fresh start for both of them. Violet threw herself back into her art with renewed passion, while Logan's career in architecture continued to flourish. Their age difference, which had seemed so insurmountable at first, became less and less relevant as they navigated the day-to-day realities of their relationship. They discovered a shared love for travel, spending weekends exploring hidden coastal towns and planning future adventures abroad. Their conversations, once filled with guilt and uncertainty, now brimmed with dreams and laughter. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of doubt, times when the weight of their choices pressed heavily upon them. Violet sometimes caught herself wondering if she had been foolish to throw away her marriage for a younger man. Logan occasionally felt insecure, worried that he couldn't provide the stability and life experience that James had. One particularly difficult evening, about 6 months into their new life together, these insecurities came to a head. Violet had run into James at a local cafe, their first encounter since the divorce was finalized. The meeting had been cordial but strained, leaving Violet emotionally drained. When she returned home, she found Logan poring over blueprints for a new project, his brow furrowed in concentration. The sight of him, so young and full of potential, suddenly made Violet feel every one of her 45 years. "Maybe we made a mistake," she blurted out, surprising even herself with the words. Logan looked up, shock and hurt flashing across his face. "What do you mean?" Violet sank onto the couch, her hands trembling slightly. "Seeing James today, it just made everything so real. The life I left behind, the stability, the shared history. And look at us, Logan. You're just starting your career. Your whole life is ahead of you. I'm middle-aged, set in my ways. What if we're kidding ourselves thinking this can work long-term?" Logan set aside his work and moved to sit beside her, taking her hands in his. "Violet, look at me," he said softly but firmly. "Age is just a number. What we have, this connection between us, it's rare and precious. Yes, we come from different stages of life, but that's what makes us work. You bring wisdom and experience to my enthusiasm. I bring fresh perspectives to your established views. We balance each other." Violet felt tears welling up in her eyes. "But what about the future? Don't you want children someday? A family of your own?" Logan's gaze never wavered as he replied, "My future is with you, Violet. If children are meant to be part of that future, we'll figure it out together. Whether that means having our own or adopting or being the coolest aunt and uncle to your sister's kids. But don't for a second think that I'm settling or sacrificing anything by being with you. You are everything I want and more." His words, spoken with such conviction, broke through the wall of doubt that had been building in Violet's mind. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I guess I'm still getting used to this happiness. It sometimes feels too good to be true." Logan smiled, brushing a soft kiss against her lips. "Then let me spend the rest of our lives proving to you that it is true, that we're real and worth every challenge we face." As they sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, Violet felt the last of her doubts melt away. She realized that love, true love, wasn't about age or societal expectations. It was about finding someone who made you want to be the best version of yourself, someone who supported your dreams and challenged you to grow. In the years that followed, Violet and Logan's relationship continued to evolve and deepen. They faced their share of obstacles, disapproving relatives, career changes, health scares, but they faced them together, their bond growing stronger with each challenge overcome. Violet's art career took off, her paintings capturing the raw emotion and passion of her journey. Logan's architectural designs began incorporating elements inspired by Violet's work, creating spaces that were both functional and deeply moving. They traveled the world, from the sun-drenched coasts of Greece to the misty mountains of Peru, each adventure adding another layer to their shared experiences. And though they decided not to have children of their own, they became beloved fixtures in the lives of their nieces and nephews, sharing their love of art and architecture with a new generation. As Violet's 50th birthday approached, Logan planned a surprise trip back to the coastal town where their story began. Standing on the beach where they had shared their first kiss, Logan got down on one knee and proposed, presenting Violet with a ring he had designed himself. "5 years ago, we took a leap of faith," he said, his eyes shining with love and certainty. "We chose love over convention, passion over comfort. It hasn't always been easy, but it's been the most rewarding journey of my life. Violet, will you marry me? Will you continue this adventure with me for the rest of our days?" Violet, overcome with emotion, pulled Logan to his feet and into a deep, passionate kiss. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. 1,000 times yes. As they stood there, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Violet marveled at the twists and turns that had led her to this moment. She had once thought her life was settled, her path set in stone. But taking a chance on love, on Logan, had opened up a world of possibilities she never could have imagined. Their story wasn't conventional. It had begun in secrecy and guilt, weathered storms of judgment and doubt. But it had blossomed into something beautiful and enduring, a testament to the power of following one's heart, of choosing passion and authenticity over societal expectations. As they walked hand in hand along the beach, planning their future together, Violet felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had found not just love, but a partner who challenged her, inspired her, and accepted her completely. In Logan's eyes, she wasn't defined by her age or her past, but by the depth of her spirit and the strength of her heart. Their journey was far from over. There would be more challenges to face, more moments of doubt to overcome. But Violet knew that whatever life threw their way, they would face it together. For in each other, they had found not just a lover, but a best friend, a confidant, and a true partner in every sense of the word. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Violet and Logan made their way back to their beachfront cottage, ready to begin the next chapter of their extraordinary love story. They had defied the odds, challenged conventions, and in doing so, had found a love that was as rare as it was beautiful. It was a love born of passion, tempered by challenge, and strengthened by unwavering commitment. A love that would continue to grow and evolve with each passing day.